Good afternoon. Welcome to the meeting of the Risk and Assurance Committee meeting. So I hope you enjoy the afternoon's meeting. Right, we'll start off. We have received an apology from Councillor Bentley, so I move that the apology from Councillor Bentley be accepted and leave on perfectly granted. Call the signature. I'll do that secondly. Councillor Swales, all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
And another apology from Councillor Griffiths, so I'll move that apology be accepted. Councillor Newell seconded. Thanks very much. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Councillor Ultra is here and requests to attend the meeting with speaking rights. So I move that Councillor Ultra be granted speaking rights with no voting rights. Can I have a second, please?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Newell. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Any declarations of interest, please confirm with Lisa that any items on today's agenda or any changes to your conflict of interest, please declare it or now or inform Lisa. So we have two speakers, is that right? Both of you? Right, so we have the Mr. and Mrs. Fabian wishing to speak. So just remind you that you have on item 8 on the agenda. And you have 5 minutes to speak. The bell will ring after 4 minutes to indicate the speaker has 1 minute remaining, and the bell will ring twice after 5 minutes. An opportunity for elected members to ask questions. Will I come to the front?
Yep. Good afternoon. I hope you've had a pleasant early afternoon. So I want to keep things pretty simple today. I want to highlight both the councillors in the room, risk J on page 75 of the agenda. This is the extreme risk around reputation and trust. It talks about trust and confidence in council leadership and decision-making process, lost about intergenerational interests. I believe it's more than just intergenerational interests, it's about the community interests as a whole. How is trust and confidence in council supposed to be being built when the impression is that the people who wish to engage with and assist the council to make prudent decisions are in some cases not believed, hold off, and in our own case, lied to, and in at least one case, not listened to at all. This gets all very frustrating. And then some wonder why community members come along and are quite strong, and in some cases seem combative. It comes down to frustration. Regarding the risk in particular, the mitigation and control strategy in this risk, in my words, and lack of a better word, is shameful. From what I've read, there doesn't seem to be any tangible actions being put in place to address this risk. So how can these controls or mitigations reduce the risk from extreme to high? And where are the measures of these mitigations or controls? Then we come to what's been in the media yesterday and today around so-called secret meetings, which reportedly will decide if Upper Hutt residents will be paying a commercial company to do what they should be doing anyway. How do actions like this create trust and improve the reputation of our council? If it has or is being decided to pay this company, how does the council justify this cost to the community? If I was sitting in your seats, I would have to ask, on that risk, what are the tangible actions that are being undertaken to reduce or mitigate this risk? How are they being measured? And how does that look to the community? Ultimately, I believe this risk should now be an issue, not a risk. Surely this risk has now been realised. Action is required to ensure that trust and the reputation of this council is not tarnished anymore and is built so that we together can build a better city.
Are there any questions from councillors? Councillor Newell? Councillor Swales.
Thank you. I'm being called Councillor Newell, but I prefer my real name. So with regard to the risk that you've identified about community engagement on page 75, And you said that the proposed mitigation and controls were not appropriate and that they were laughable. Do you have any suggestion? Because I know as an elected member, my issue that I have personally, how do I get an engagement at a level that works for the community? And do you have any suggestions of what that might look like?
Sorry.
No. Yes.
I think there needs to be something that's at least measurable.
Yep.
If I'm to look, I printed it out in the bottom here what the mitigation was, and the
Yeah.
decisive governance position is taken to ensure intergenerational quality exists. Council executive to make all appropriate and relevant operational decisions. Key controls will be clear and have a shared focus of direction. What key controls? How are they clear? What are appropriate decisions? Decisive governance, what does that mean? There doesn't seem to be a plan behind it from what I can see to say these are the actions that we're going to be taking. And I would suggest things like community focus groups, different ways that the council could interact with the community or bring them in to help them understand where the council's at. Because sometimes it's an understanding thing. And when it's not transparent, then it's very hard for people to understand, get on board and actually go along with the role. And then that makes it harder for you guys sitting around here making decisions because you're getting from one side, hey, why are we doing that? You shouldn't be doing that, so on and so forth. But there may be other reasons why that's happening.
So will you table your comments, and I'm assuming those elected ones that you've just articulated to me are in that paper?
No, well, not the answer to the question, no.
I just thought that.
But I'll tell you what, they're on the YouTube feed.
Can I just have something? So what I'd like to do is, you touched on something that is quite relevant at the moment in the community, and what you may not be aware of is that we can't address that question that you put to us because under the Official Information Act, we are not privileged to be able to answer or address that.
I understand you just had a meeting and I understand that it's kind of
Okay, so, you know, should people want to have questions asked about that, then they have a right to reply by doing an OIA or a Lagorna request. But I just needed to let you know that it's not in a position or a forum where we can answer you at the moment.
So my question is around the perception of how that looks,
Yes.
rather than
Getting an answer.
to the question.
No, and thank you for that, but I just felt that I needed to answer in the only way that I could for all of us.
Yep, no problem.
So thank you.
Any more questions? Louis? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've sent mine through as an email as well because there's links.
Yeah, we've got them loaded on Stella. So.
Yeah, which is up. It just made it easier. Okay, so this is under Mr. J as well, under page 75. I've basically been here on a few occasions and said that we've actually wanted to work with the council, not against it. And this submission is meant to be constructive and to hopefully help work better together. The community deserves transparency, honesty and respect, and there's a lot of people out there who are feeling that they're not getting that, whether there's a breakdown in communication, unsure. And it obviously swings both ways. We have to respect, you have to respect. Over the past year, we have personally found it very difficult to get straight answers from some of the councillors and the executive team, but we would like to start on a very positive note. Councillor Bentley, he's indicated on numerous occasions that it would be nice to have the community involved in looking at annual plans and things like that, and going through them with you to make sure that it's more understandable, which I think would help out everybody in the long run, especially when you come out to talk to people. There's not the same stock standard answers or the confusion. And the question has to be asked is, why hasn't it been actioned already? Why isn't it in place? This was discussed last year at the LTA. So that's something that I would like to see somebody do something about. Councillor Newell has also indicated her concerns about getting the information out there, especially to the ageing population, which needs to be done. There's so many people out there who are left in the dark and don't actually understand what's going on in their own city, which is really sad. Deputy Mayor Swales has been challenging and asking a lot of questions in the community and wanting to appear to and give our voice at council, which is fantastic. And Councillor Ultra has also been doing that. Why we believe people are losing an interest in interacting with the council. There's a personal example. We put up lots in the field that they are not being listened to. Tick boxes, is that the 5-minute bell thing?
No,
Oh, sorry.
continue.
It's just someone coming in
Oh,
and on to the next agenda item.
sorry, got confused. Okay. Personal example of the plan is out of respect, I'm going to leave councillors' names out of this. But Paul and I went to a meeting and at the end plan, and one of the councillors sat there and basically told us he got nothing out of our submission from the Maidstone Terraces and told us our emails were silly. We didn't really know how to take that, and it's those kind of things that are going to put you guys in an awkward position over time if they continue. Tick boxes are another. Many feel that there are tick boxes, and there's a very clear one here where a councillor was talking about Wellington Water, and there's supposed to be 2 options, and the 2 options are one and the same. So people feel like, what's the point in actually ticking a box because it's already done? They feel unheard and shut down. There's been numerous times during submissions where people have been shut down, and we had one last year with somebody asking about the army rates, and they were shut down. And then we also had councillors who seemed unaware of their own standing orders. We presented a petition with 2,225 people, and after we presented it, we were told that there was 225 people on that petition that had signed it, and were any of them rates payers standing orders. That it's not going to happen, and the people that had put all that time and effort into that, and all those 2,225 people feel very undervalued, especially those that weren't ratepayers who were still paying through their rents. The definitions, if the council could start looking at how they can help the community understand definitions. There was an in-principle situation where there was 3 people in this room and myself, and it got quite confusing, and it actually ended up in the paper, which I've got the room in there. It'd be nice for those things not to happen, for you guys to have a real good definition of what things are, so that you're clear, we're clear, and everybody's got a very clear understanding, so those sorts of things don't happen and put people in those positions. And the other one that I have to bring up out of respect for all the public comments that have been on social media today and around the community is the criddles. We understand you can't speak on it, but it would be nice to see at some point, how did we actually get to that point?
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Absolutely. Swales.
Thank you, Chair, through you to Kate. You talked about the deep dive on page 75. The one under community engagement is reputation and trust. Were you also indicating that they went hand in hand with the comments that you made around community engagement and reputation and trust?
Yes.
So I'm going to put to you the same question as what I put to Paul, is you talked about a focus group, but are there any other ways that you might think that we as elected members or as a council officers, or us as an entity could better engage with the community?
I think there's a lot of people in our community who are elderly, who don't even know how to get into the council buildings, how to actually come and submit. It's foreign to them. So maybe some education out there, whether you go into senior net, whether you go into grey power, whether you go into rest home type situations, and try and help people to understand, not make it so scary for people. I mean, last year was our first time here, and it can be pretty daunting, and you've got all these people looking at you, you've got a bell that rings at 5 minutes. I mean, I'm still, and you don't know what to expect, and sometimes just having people explain it to you, make it not so scary, have a couple of community faces is gonna make a big difference, I think, and not them and us type thing, which at the moment, it definitely feels like them and us. If you watch the comments on Facebook and other places, it's basically the community against the council, and that's not how it should be. It should be more together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll move to item 4, final audit report to the council for the 2023-24 financial year. And I believe joining from Zoom we have John Whittle and J.K. Mitchell. And Debbie, thank you. All right, 3 of you. So perhaps we could open up with any comments on your final audit report, please. Who shall go first? That's from the audit office.
So, yeah, so John, just to
John?
if you do, John is our outgoing auditor, so
Okay,
he'll talk
right.
to the last year's report.
Yeah.
And Debbie is the incoming
Okay,
auditor, so
right.
she will talk to the
So
plan.
that's the 24-25.
Yeah.
And John for
And
23.
Yako is the manager for continuing.
Right.
So Yako is outgoing and Yako is incoming as well.
All right, thank you.
Confusing.
I think
but
I've got that. So John, would you like to provide any comments, or would you like?
I think I could probably, for the most part, take it as read. You know, in terms of what the key items we've highlighted in the summary up front of the report, or around the continuing modification to the audit opinion around the performance reporting, the total number of complaints, and then we've also included there some other aspects that were key to last year's audit, particularly around the Three Waters valuation last year and the other infrastructure valuations. That also led to an emphasis of matter being included in our audit report last year on, you know, some of the future uncertainty over some of those asset valuations as to whether that level will be maintained. And then we also commented briefly around our ongoing work around the H2O extreme upgrades, and as that project was coming into the final phase of completion, and some of the risks that normally follow with that. That'd probably be the key parts of the report. Otherwise, I'll be happy to answer any questions on it.
All right, thank you, John. I'll open it up for questions from councillors. Mara?
Through Chair, less questions for Audit New Zealand and more from officials in terms of really probably just wondering whether, Kate, you're in a position to give a bit of an update on where, given that we're nearly at the end of this financial year, whether you're able to just give a bit of an update on where you are at with addressing some of the recommendations and some of the gaps that were highlighted. In particular, maybe starting with performance measures, and then probably the other ones I'm interested in is down on the sort of beneficial end in terms of some of the recommendations in that space as well, because some of those have been around for a little while.
So through you, Chair, I'll address page 24 and 28 of the report. The non-compliance, the Wellington Water remains an issue. The DIA measures is an ongoing matter. We continue to work with them, and I wouldn't say it's resolved. Really honest, it's ongoing. Unless the CEO to my right has more knowledge than I do, I think it's going to be an issue at year end again. Greenhouse gas emissions.
Chair, just in terms of that one, I'm really conscious that this obviously impacts on other councils as well. Is there any collective discussion that's being had across councils? I mean, obviously there's ongoing discussions with Wellington Water about lots of other things as well. And this may not be the absolute highest priority. But does this continue to be wrapped into discussions around general improvement and performance at Wellington Water?
The answer is yes. I think if I can give my view on it, I think it's the highest priority matter with everything going on in Wellington Water. I'm not making an excuse, I'm just being practical.
Yeah.
I think that's really the answer there. On the greenhouse gas emissions, we cannot carry a staff vacancy in that area for most of the year. We've just filled that vacancy. We've pretty much made the decision that, given, to your point, we are now 10 months through the year, that the reality is we need to do that work. We need to do some benchmarking work before we can do some measurement work. And so we'll probably be in the same position as at the end of the year, but it's a known sort of, that makes sense. The rest of those controls we're working on, like water payments, we've made progress on that. Actually, I'll go to, as I say, the beneficial ones. The City Council to present the amount of WIP individually for each asset category. We will do that in the annual report. We need to present them individually in a horizontal way, whereas we had them as a vertical way, so we'll do that. Assessments of receivable collectability, we will work with Audit on that. Audit believe that we have a provision of I think it's $50,000. Audit want to see that go higher, so we're working through that. And the regular infrastructure asset reconciliations and formalisation review of these, we've done more work on that, and we've been more frequent on our additions and disposals. That's in the operations team, filtering through into the finance area. So I think that's the rest of it. I'll just take as, yeah.
Thank you. It's good to see some progress, because some of those have been sort of sitting there for a couple of years. So,
Yeah.
it's good to see there's some movement on those.
If we could add just on the Wellington Water reporting on the performance measures, you know, I think you were saying earlier there's a lot of discussion with Wellington Water happening at the moment, and I think that is the key part to this. Is, you know, they are reporting on these measures in their annual report as well, and they also those measures are deficient there. So it's working with them to they should have a lot of this information, because they're receiving both sets of data. They're receiving the request for service as well as the request for information. So it's making them change their process first to start reporting on the total data set. And that's when you'll see the change happen for council.
Thank you.
Councillor
Just to clarify, on page 21, what does componentisation of car parks and traffic signals, what on earth is that?
Page 21.
It's to do with roading and water valuations. It's page 26 if you've got a hard copy. Hopefully that's helpful. That's under valuation recommendation. The very last. Bottom of the page. Yeah.
That's about how we build our asset value. So the auditor, I don't know how to explain it to you. It's how you take your WIP and turn it into an asset, I suppose. How do you explain it?
Probably an easy example is to think about or a street light.
Yeah.
So the street light has two key components. It's the light filament on the top of the pole,
Yeah.
the thing that wears out, and that wear out rate will be greater than the pole itself. So they're treated as, although they're part of one, they're separable components from a valuation perspective, because one lasts much longer than the other.
I always think of a car. It's like the wheels, the body.
Yeah,
the steering
yeah,
wheel.
I'm with it now. Is that word componentisation? But I see now, and I can understand traffic signals being the same scenario. Okay.
I'll give you a 101 on on that word after the.
Okay, that was it. That was my question. Chair, I do have one.
Yes, as well.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to go to page 26 in the hard copy, and my question is on the disaster recovery plan. Now, when the audit came back to us, were you just referring to our IT systems, or were you looking at our total preparedness as council? Because it just seems to be that we're referring to IT infrastructure.
Yes,
So
that's
it's
right,
just
yeah.
that. Okay.
Yes.
So you think in other parts, sorry, Chair. can
That's
I-
right, carry on.
Thank you. So you think in other parts as a council, we are prepared, we've got a really good disaster recovery plan, it's only our IT that needs to be worked on? Or do you not look at it?
No, we don't look at it. This is,
Okay,
you know, we just specifically have to cover this, this aspect of.
okay, thank you. Just thought I'd ask. Thank you, Chair.
Any other councillors' questions? I've got one, Ron, in terms of the receivables collectability. When you say prepare a proper assessment, are you asking the council to go through all the aged debtors listing and assess whether or not they are collectible or not? Or is it because you think that and then arrive at a figure for doubtful debts? Or are you saying, well, the probability of collectability is 50k and you think it should be higher? So are you looking at asking the council to do an individual assessment of each outstanding debtor, or what, please? What's the methodology that you're asking the council to do?
So that, I mean, it's just a more thorough assessment of the debtors. You might have some debtors, for example, that historically just don't pay. So even though their debt might be current and they've got some older debt, that debt should be indicated as bad straight away, you know, because you've assessed that debtor as a high risk or whatever for impairment, you know. So rather than just saying everything over 90 days is at risk,
Okay,
everything.
right. Because that's what's happening at the moment, is it? So everything on the age debtors listing over 90 days, 3 months, is regarded as doubtful. But there could be some doubtful 1 month or 2 months.
Yeah, I think if I remember, and Yaka, you can help me, but I think it's at the moment the process just could be more thorough. So it's never going to be a significant change to the impairment, but it's just the way the impairment is done. It needs to be done on a risk basis. You know, so if you know some debtors are higher risk, that should reflect in the provision.
Right.
Yeah, because
Okay,
I think just to add to that, I mean, it's a combination of those in terms of from a risk-based, and then when obviously at the end of the day, the doubtful debt provision is then understated, which we feel it should be higher. Again, it was not material, but that's an area that they needs to look at.
Okay, so I was going to ask about materiality as well. So, I mean, 50,000 doesn't even come within your materiality. Horizons. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, so if not, I'll move that the committee recommends the council receives and notes the report to the council on audit or updates to the council for the year end of 30 June 24. Second, please. Thank you, Mayor. Any debate on that? If not, I'll move the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 5, which is the annual audit plan for 2025. So
Could I just make a comment? I know that I missed it, but I'd just like to thank John, because I've been on council for quite some time, for the work that you've done in coming and presenting and always being available for any questions that we as council have put to you. And some of them have been quite easy and some of them have been a little bit curly. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. No, thanks to all of you as well. I have met with the mayor and the chief executive to also say that thanks for the cooperation over the last few years, and I wish you well going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. So we'll move on to item 5, and that's the audit plan for 25. And so that'll be Debbie. And do you have any comments on the plan at all, as presented?
I've no comments on the plan. I just take it as it read. That you'll see the plan slightly different to the prior years. However, the contents is basically very similar and in line. The way it's been presented is where all the risks and where our focus areas are in the front end, and then it's broken into some sector interesting commentary. And then at the back, you'll see it's just a timetable discussing our materiality and what our focus area is from a performance information.
Thank you. So I'll open it up for questions, councillors. Sarah?
Through you, Chair. Thanks, Debbie, and welcome to the audit. I just had a couple of questions around some items where there's potential lack of clarity on what might be required by the council. In particular, there was a comment in there around that Audit New Zealand still needs to communicate expectations on the reporting for local water done well. I'm just wondering when in fact we might get clarity on what those expectations are. And one of the other issues that I'm just aware of is that it also talked about the DIA water safety standard, but noted that the guidance hadn't been issued yet. And again, just going, being held to account to a standard that actually we don't necessarily have clarity can be quite difficult for officials. So just wondering whether you're able to talk about both of those.
From the local water done well, that is a space that's evolving at the moment. I have had quite a number of discussions in our monthly meetings with Kate. It's just something that I know that DI is expected to be sending out some guidance soon. At this point in time, I do not know exactly when. But I do expect it to be coming out soon. The same as the water done well. That's a sector focus area, which we're also just waiting for additional guidance to come through on that perspective, which we have been engaging and be keeping open about what's evolving in that space.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I think it would be important just if you can reflect back the importance of actually having those sort of guidance on standards provided before the end of the financial year. Otherwise, it actually does put, make it quite difficult for councils to effectively be able to report on them.
Right. Any other questions? Okay. I have a couple. It's on page 40 and it turns to the benchmarking report. We'll take that one first. And you go on to say that we wish to signal to the council that where information used in the DIA's benchmarking process is drawn from the annual report, this may create additional areas of focus for both the council and the audit team during the audit process. And should any additional areas be identified, we will notify the council separately. What sort of things do you have in mind there, please, Debbie?
I think it's just we're waiting to see what's happening in that space involving. At the moment, we haven't received any further feedback from the DIA, what's happening. So we're just alluding that in this space, something might evolve, something might happen. But at this point in time, we have not received any additional guidance from the DIA to saying what are the expectations happening in that terms of that space. Hence why that you'll see that in terms of certain sections that have just been grouped together as a sector focus underneath the same as the water done well.
Okay, thank you. And the one after that is the integrity self-assessment survey. And my understanding is that this council has received advice of such a survey as being conducted. Do you know when it's going to be conducted?
So current at the moment it's still at the beginning stages. We have sent out a letter to all the to the council, basically indicating that a survey will be sent. We've asked who the key contact would be. From my understanding from internally that they're busy finalising that survey, and it also will be going out in the month of June sometime to collect all the data. So all the surveys will be going out to the respective councils more at the same time.
I can maybe just add to that. I mean, they had a couple of entities that they just pilot, and then based on this pilot, they just making some changes to the surveys, and then it will go out.
Yeah, thank you. And my last question is concerning the note event subsequent to balance date. So by September, councils have to decide on the water plan. It'll be September this year, which will happen before you finalise your audit report. So what are you contemplating seeing in that event subsequent to balance date, please?
So from that perspective, you'll have some additional disclosure that will need to be happening in that space. At the moment, I I think we all need to stand, well, where do we actually land in terms of the space, in terms of the entity, the makeup. So there's quite a bit that needs to be evolved and worked through before you can actually finalize that subsequent event disclosure.
Any other questions? If not, the motion is that the committee recommends the council receive and note the report titled Annual Audit Plan for 2025. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Swale, seconder. Thank you, Sarah. All in the debate? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried, thank you. We move on to item 6, Audit New Zealand Enquiries of Governance. Kate, have you got anything to say about this?
I've received some comments from the independent member, which means I will swing some of my language around, but I think small, if you'll indulge me, a small editorial
Yep. Thank you.
matters, so just reordering some of my responses.
Yep,
Nothing,
thank you.
no new information, I don't think.
And I counselled Kate that where about have any frauds been identified, or there are any suspected or alleged frauds, and the answer was none. I've asked Councillor Deer to add after that to our best of our belief and knowledge. So that's in 2 places. So one of my suggestions that we had, just covering ourselves. Are there any questions on this particular governance inquiries? It's pretty bog standard inquiries that auditors make. Sarah, you have anything? You happy?
As I said, I've given some feedback directly through Kate in terms of some wording. I mean, probably the thing that I think would be useful, least probably, I think, in this triennium, but I do wonder whether actually, as part of looking at strategic risk discussion next triennium, is to think about how do we better reflect the risk of fraud into at least one of our strategic risks. When I went through, I thought actually we do consider it when we talk about contract management and when we talk about particular topics, but we don't really explicitly draw it out, and I do think there's value in that.
No other question, Councillor Swale?
So with regard to what our independent member has said, will we be taking a note of that to look at maybe implementing or making a suggestion? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Can we have
Thank
that noted, please, Lisa? Thank you. Right, so if there are no other questions, I'll put the motion that this committee recommends council receives and notes the report by the Audit New Zealand Enquiries of Governance. Endorses and advises officers of any amendments to the content contained in the attached draft board questionnaire of Audit New Zealand, and question of that officers finalise the questionnaire with signatures from His Worship the Mayor and the Chief Executive and release the final document to Audit New Zealand. I so move. Second, please, Councillor Muir. Any debate? No. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, Strategic Risk Management Report. I'll open that up for questions from councillors.
Sorry, this is
Sarah? Yeah.
through you, Chair. I just wouldn't mind just talking about the external policy changes one that's in the, I know it's not, it is part of our deep dive as well, but it was more up in the space where we're not on target at the moment. And tell me if I've let you head too far, Chair, because I wasn't sure whether you were going down to dashboards or not yet, or whether
Oh, that's fine.
report. So where I'm looking is actually page 69, which is the risk snapshot. And we've got external policy changes, and it's the only one where we indicate that we're not on target to meet the desired level of risk. And there was an element when I read through it that I think it's just where we would get to the deep dive as well, because in fact I thought we do have a lot of a lot of things that are being done. They are all being rated as partially effective, except the fact that there's complete uncertainty around what policy we might get thrown at, and that makes it difficult to resource. But I'm just not sure whether that's enough to go, we're not moving successfully from being in a high space to being into a considerable risk. So I just wouldn't mind people thinking about that, particularly when we move down to look at the deep dive.
Through you, Chair. Just Before I answer that question, just note that I changed the order of these papers slightly just to deal with the significant forecasting assumptions first and then to move into risk. On this page, I take your comments that we're doing as much as we can to mitigate the risk with the tools we have and the people we have. This, as process, this goes to ELT and we run through it and go, yes, 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 no. So, and that's just to give a snapshot reflection of all the risks. The response to this one was, and it was mainly from the individual responsible for the area, feels that the space is moving so quickly that it is difficult to know how to mitigate the risk and whether we're doing it well enough or not. And I'll give you a very simple example. You've got a vacant, and the person's point was this, you've got a vacancy there, but you don't know what's coming. So do you fill that vacancy or do you let it go? Does that make sense? So that was the very simple way that we looked around the content coming versus the resourcing you put in it to fill it, because it's just so unknown at the moment. Does that make sense? So that's why we assessed it as it's probably not on target, because it's very fluid. I mean, I think the room is aware that there's a lot of government changes coming at us and we just don't know.
Through you, Chair, what I'd like to probably say, because whenever something's really like not on target, so all the rest, we're not there yet, but we're working towards it, would be in some ways demonstrably being able to see, well, what do we think therefore needs to be different to bring it back on target again. And in that particular instance, it might be going, actually, if we get hit with something that we're unaware of, actually, it might mean that we need to fill that with some contract resource while we find a permanent role and fill that vacancy. Or it might be that, in fact, we need to, it would be useful to understand what the plan B is.
Sorry, Chair, I'm somewhat lost. Are we looking at the risk dashboard, the snapshot, or are we looking at the significant forecasting assumptions?
Snapshot.
Thank you.
I think what it was trying to do was show that it's just so uncertain. It's fluid. That's the fluidness, and if we haven't captured that, then apologies.
Thanks, Pam.
And through you, Chair, the answer in part reflects the answer to your question, Sarah, and that is that by not filling the vacancy, we're effectively maintaining a contingency. So then when we have more certainty, we know what the more specific skill set is that we need.
That's good. Thank you.
That's right.
So to follow on this conversation, and I get the analogy and thank you for it, Kate, but my concern is that as these things drag on and take time to land with regard to wherever the external pieces of legislation are going to land, do we have at least the capacity to stay across it and know that we can't mitigate it until we know that it's absolutely landed? Because we've got two pieces of legislation under the RMA. We've got local water done well, which the legislation still hasn't, but we're still resourced enough to keep us as a governance level up to date with where we are at the moment.
I
feel that we are.
Yes, I think that is how the deep dive is answered.
Yeah,
Exactly. You've summarised it really nicely.
yeah,
Is that we've got enough to keep there, but there is at that front end a worry that there's more coming and we just don't know.
Yeah.
It is so fluid. So that's how it was answered.
okay, thank you.
If no more questions on the paper generally, shall we now go address the deep dive? So the first deep dive we'll have a look will be on my page 78, whatever it is on Stella, probably earlier. And that's the SRC infrastructure deficit. So are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions on or comments on the infrastructure deficit deep dive, please? There.
Through you, Chair. I wouldn't mind just hearing if it was talking about the one measure there that's considered to be not effective. So there was one of the controls which was continue to lobby NZTA regarding network condition and risks, with a view of going, let's engage with effectively an escalated level. And I just wouldn't mind hearing about that one.
Through you, Chair, this is more a national issue than a local one. And our staff are working more directly with NZTA to try and understand and advocate for more funding, particularly in that low risk, low cost category, which in the past has been almost discretionary, but is now quite heavily controlled when funding reduced. So, I mean, for example, we put together a work program for a number of safety improvements. They've only funded a very small part of that. We're engaging directly with them to advocate for more funding on the basis of the impact that it will have on communities, if it's not done. But at the same time, and we've, believe it or not, in the last week or so, had a number of complaints about potholes and people damaging vehicles by driving into them. Again, and that's a particularly tricky one because the previous minister asked for reports on numbers of potholes that were being repaired. And across local government sector, that number is declining because the funding has not been made available to match the expectations that have been set.
Is the potholes declining or the filling in the potholes is declining?
The response rate to fixing them is declining.
Right. Or someone's forgotten.
But look, we're going directly, but we're also part of national groups that are advocating on behalf of increased funding in certain specific activity areas. But an example of one of those groups is the Road Controlling Authorities Forum.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that deep dive? If not, we'll move on to the next deep dive that's been conducted as external policy changes. Any comments, questions on this, please, councillors? I think we had some discussion on this. If not, we'll move on to the third deep dive, which is organisational culture. Any questions or comments on this deep dive?
Really clear, and I realise that the council may have had some form of separate briefing. Just wondering whether the staff survey results had come out, whether there's any information that officials can give some key highlights and how that might impact on this this assessment in terms of this deep dive.
Through you, Chair, the staff survey was not. Wouldn't describe it as comprehensive. It was what was called a pulse survey.
Right.
And it was more of a targeted survey to the staff on specific issues. The feedback on that identified 3 key areas for that were none of the issues were negative, but the areas that warranted more work were first of all remuneration. And we're currently working on the remuneration strategy and plan, which is going to be brought back to council. The next one was around communication, and that was seemed to be targeted more at flows of communication upwards and downwards within groups rather than across groups. And so we're providing some enhanced training, particularly for our third tier managers to help improve that information flow. And the third area, help me, Sandra? Leadership, of course. and that's being addressed through the same mechanism as well, through enhanced training. But those were the 3 highlight work-ons.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor
So the one that kind of came up for me, and it's partially affected, is staff fatigue. Right, and it's continue to manage workload and staff commitments. So I appreciate we've gone through a restructure and that people you know, I would have thought that now that we've landed on that things might have settled down and people would be more understanding of what their jobs and their job roles are, and that there's a better work-life balance. But this doesn't appear to be addressing that in some way because it's partially affected. So whilst you say that you'll continue to manage workloads and staff commitments, is that because there is an issue there, or we're just doing it to, I don't know, manage people through the aftermath of the restructure? Sorry.
We're all going to answer that, but
Yeah.
Jeff can.
Through you, Chair, there's a number of answers to
Yeah.
that question. First of all, there are pockets within the organisation where staff fatigue is probably more evident than other areas. Why that is, there are a number of reasons. One of them is that, and that's why I keep referring to this year as a year of consolidation. Part of that consolidation is actually taking the time to get people to understand and develop new and different ways of doing things. One of the difficulties that we face as an organisation is that because people have done a job in a certain way for such a long period of time, that they can only see that one way of doing that task. And so there is a process to be gone through to encourage people to look for different and innovative and probably simpler ways of doing things. But the other aspect of this is, and it always has been made clear to staff, is that there is an expectation that people will work smarter and not harder. We've got to change that mindset, and we've got to encourage people, if they are under pressure, to be pushing back to their managers and to us and saying, this is what we can do with the time we've got. You help us prioritise what's important. I mean, you can't reduce staff numbers by 20% and expect to do exactly what you were doing before. So we're in a period of, I call it consolidation, but it's readjustment as well.
Okay, I have a supplement to that. That's okay for you. So, I mean, it's really good to have that explanation, and the reason why I put that is that whilst we went through the restructure and that we've landed it, we know that the level that we're comfortable to operate and deliver the services that are expected of us. My fear is that if we don't look at this and address it quite quickly, that we might lose staff. Is that an issue or a consequence?
Through the Chair, yes, it is a risk, and then that's why we've signalled it in this
Okay.
document.
All right, thank you. That's all I have to you.
and move on to the last deep dive. Strategic relationships. Any comments or questions, please? A few partially effective stuff here.
Yeah, I was just interested in hearing from officials whether there are any particular strategic relationships that might be requiring more effort or, you know, could be considered slightly more risky at the moment that you're having to kind of work a bit hard on.
Through you, Chair, it's an interesting question, and I think one of the biggest challenges we have, and it's not a response to any particular group that we're a part of, but more the fact that the groups we are part of, we're regarded as a smaller council, and that makes it quite challenging for us to always get our voice heard. Certainly you see it at a political level through groups like the Regional Leadership Forum, and even a group like the civil defence emergency management group. You know, we are a 10% funder of those groups. And when you've got groups at the other end of the scale that are funding 40% of that activity, it is very difficult for us to have a meaningful voice. Yes, we all play nicely and we all pretend to listen to each other and work together, but ultimately those groups who are the key funders of those activities, their views do tend to dominate. So that's a constant challenge that we're battling against. I mean, even if you think about the work streams going on in terms of local waters done well, again, we're a minor funding partner, and that gets reflected in the extent to which our voice tends to get heard in terms of making decisions. So yeah, it's something that's very difficult to overcome, but it's just our size relative to some of the others. I mean, yes, we can foot it with Porirua, but Wellington City, Greater Wellington.
So when we talk about strategic relationships, these are all sort of external to Upper Hutt groups. And given that we've heard some commentary from the public tonight about relationships locally, are we giving any thought at an officer level of how we might better communicate with community?
Through you, Chair, I guess the way that this risk was written, it was more focused on those external groups that we tend to engage with. If council were of a mind to, perhaps in the new triennium, that we perhaps think more about how we integrate the other risk that we have on our schedule, which is community engagement, with a not going to say less strategic risk, but a more local strategic risk focus. Look, at the moment, our community development team engage with over 50 different groups within this community on a regular basis. But that's more of, I suppose, a transactional, operational level engagement rather than necessarily a political engagement. And whether there is the desire or need to convert some of that engagement into a broader framework, I would take advice on.
Can I add to that? If we go back to page 70, the community engagement has always been assessed slightly higher than the strategic relationships. So as much as Jeff says the strategic relationships have challenges, we've always assessed the community as being I don't want to say more important, but more of high risk in this context. So we're requiring that effort. So it's sort of
We looked at that particular in the last meeting, deep dive. I believe we discussed it quite a lot because that was a reaction to a long-term plan response.
But just seeing as we had a community critiquing, then, you know, at what point does it change from just community engagement to actually some kind of strategic relationship? I suppose that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, and through the chair, I guess one of the challenges with that is what sort of criteria you would use to identify the groups that you engage with, which are strategic, which are representative, which are of a smaller, more individualised scale, and that would impact to an extent on how much effort we need to put into each of those types of relationships.
No, to go on and further the conversation that has happened between the CEO and the CFO and my colleague, councillor Newell. I was just thinking, you know, whilst we have a community engagement group that do, as you said, engage with 50 odd plus, and they do a great job with regard to it. But it is more on that operational level. I think what the community we're trying to articulate is from a governance level, that maybe we need to start looking at, and I know that you're putting a wonderful pack together, CEO, on, you know, people thinking about standing for council, maybe a similar pack on governance, on how to engage with council, when to engage with council, might be something that elected members could work with you and other leaders in our community, community to kind of develop and present that into the community, just as a suggestion for the next triennium, but it's kind of breaking down some of those barriers that are perceived by the community. I know that Councillor Newell and I have had numerous conversations about that kind of thing. How do we, have that conversation with the community, just as a suggestion. But I do like the conversation that has happened with the three of us here at the moment. Yeah.
And through chairs open to
Having that.
having them.
Well, we'll come and talk to you.
Yeah, we need to.
Thank you.
We need
Yeah.
to.
So, CEO, don't we have a list of people that with the council contacts to discuss or get their opinions on various issues? I remember that was a couple of years ago. Is that still continuing?
Through the chair, I don't believe that's been done to the extent that it used to be done. But yes, it was alluded to before, and I'm certainly aware that other councils still operate quite extensive. There is a correct word for it, but extensive groups within the community that they maintain contact with on regular issues. Yes, yeah. And look, in my mind, that is something that we could establish relatively simply.
But like many people's forums.
Yes, yeah. And in a sense, it becomes a regular group within the community that you can poll if you want on issues or seek feedback on issues from.
Well, Chair, if I could just mention, Lou Roloff is sort of very keen to take the lead and to communicate with us. He's got some good networks into the community. So there's somebody that's absolutely hot on and ready and keen. And just how do we get that to the next level of actually engaging with them more constructively?
Perhaps, Lisa, we have some note in the minutes, please, on that sort of summarises that discussion, please, about the use of many people's forums, local community forums, local focus groups that I thought had been set up and we were using, but perhaps we should be really using it a lot more, particularly as we move forward, particularly on local water done well as well and other issues that are coming up. Okay, so that's the end of the deep dive. So you can take your snorkeling equipment off. I wanted to say that. And so the motion is that the committee recommends the council receive the notes and report entitled Strategic Risk Management Report. I have a second mover, please. Councillor Slales, seconder, please. Councillor Earl, and you made. No, I'll move it. Say. Well, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thanks. Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 8, sensitive expenditure report. The only person that's been busy is Mayor Guppy, telephoning people or receiving phone calls. Is there any comment on this report? If not, I'll move that the committee recommends the council receive and note the sensitive expenditure report. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Newell. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to the Treasury report. Kate, do you have anything to say on this? Apart from one amendment?
No, that's the next report.
Oh, right, okay. Any questions, comments, please?
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Just wondering whether the Group Manager Corporate Services could just talk about, we were actually with the CapEx budget noting that it had been raised as an emphasis of matter that we wouldn't spend the capital budget. Through you, Chair. The emphasis of matter is that audit acknowledge that there is a high, there's a risk that we won't deliver all our capital program, we won't spend it, which means we won't get the debt level that is set out. So that's the context, and as at March, this council spent 70% of its capital budget, which is very high for this council. That's been led mainly by the fact that this year's pool was procured and was a large part of our capital budget. And the pool's largely being funded and it's finished and it's largely being funded, so a little bit more money. The areas, so we're 70% year to date. For the rest of the year, the capital program will focus on roads and waters. And those are two areas that this council does not directly control. And it's already been commented on earlier that the road budget will not be fully expended due to NZTA cutbacks. So at the moment, it's pretty much on track where we'd expect it to be. That's the answer to the question. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions? Remember?
Chair. Just down in paragraph 26, just noting that the LGFA standby facility has been increased. Just wondering whether you could just talk about the rationale for doing that. That was increased with LGFA because we moved from one of the commercial banks because it was a cheaper option. The debt levels being close to 200 million now, we have to have greater standby facilities. That's a ratio. Okay, thank you.
No other questions. We'll move that the committee recommends the council receive and note the report from the Treasury report. Second, please. Sarah, thank you. Any debate on that? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those say, aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Move on to the update of the Treasury risk management policy, including liability management and investment policies. Hey.
I do have a comment here. We made an error.
Mistake.
Right. First one, you're allowed them, apparently. It should say 40% in the policy in both places. I'm thinking only one change. So my apologies. Page 113 of your papers. New Zealand Registered Banks rated A minus, 40%. Or 40 million, sorry.
Sorry, once again, what page was that?
It's page 20 of the policy or page 113 on printed copy.
Where it's got 30, it should have been 40.
It's in table 6.3.
Yellow highlighted. In the recommendations, it says 40, but in that table it says 30, and it should have been 40.
Total maximum counterparty, so it's about the counterparty levels.
Eagle Eye picked it up.
Like a few eagle eyes.
So just hold it for a second while I try and figure out what page this is online.
So
It's only online.
So you're in the policy, yeah, you're there. And if you go to page 113 or 20 at the bottom, go to 20. Yeah, here we are, here. That should be 40.
It should be 40, not
40 and
20.
40.
Yeah.
40 and 40.
Yeah, New Zealand registered now.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I've got 30. Yeah.
Yes.
Our apologies.
Any questions on the update of the Treasury risk management policies? We've seen many changes. Right.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether it would be useful just to understand the rationale again for lifting that limit.
Because I think the rationale is probably demonstrated on page 88, sorry, councillor Neil, page 88 of the papers. And the previous paper, which you can see, we're struggling with counterparty risk because at a limit of 20 and the swaps and trades we're having to do with the debt, we're just getting too high. And we have one bank there which is really clear. We keep hitting up.
So through you, Chair, does that increase the risk profile? And just for us noting more than anything, the risk profile of where we're holding our debt much, but effectively higher than what our policy currently does?
Well, we're not.
Because at the moment we're.
I'm trying to spread it.
Okay.
I'm trying to spread it, whereas at the moment well, there's two things happening at the moment. We're hitting our headroom, so we can't go higher. And we are putting a lot into one bank. And I'd rather spread it. And and we should be able to put more into one bank because the totality is more than that. So it's a smaller percentage.
Okay, thank you.
There's a percentage going.
I just have one question. In the table on my pages 99, delegation of authority, and 100. So these do they align with our policy of delegation?
Yeah, they do.
Okay,
That's fine.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
Actually,
so that's,
yeah.
that's it, yes. Thank you.
We read through those last
Yeah,
time when we bought this, we should have bought it last time as well.
right.
So the delegations were updated last time to be in line with what were the draft delegations at that point.
Yes,
That we had then adopted.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
All good?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so, the recommendation is, the committee recommends the council move A, B, and C. I'm not gonna read out A, B, and C.
I'm happy.
You're very good. You're second, fair enough. Any debate? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Thank you. Treasury report. All right, I've turned over the wrong way. Page 11. My bringing health and safety report. Do you have any update? All right, thank you. Open it up for debate or questions. Sorry, for questions. Are we all healthy? No questions? That's fine.
Page 124, and it's under health and safety audits completed. I'm not quite sure what your page is online, but it's got pretty,
Yes.
that's the one.
Yeah, we've got it.
So it says that during the last 3 months, 20 health and inspected. So these inspections are a walkthrough of the places of the staff and all of the places that we've been. Did we identify any new or anything outstanding that's usually aware of?
Chair, no, and there would be minor hazards that would be identified, which would be quickly fixed, but nothing major.
Right, and a subsequent question with regard to that, the Half High Club, sorry, the Half High building, not the club, right, has got some work going on there. So this took place prior to that work happening?
Chair, yeah, we can't access it at the moment.
Yeah, because that's what I thought. Okay. Thank you.
So can I ask that on that page, paragraph 13, which is the use of an external contractor, would that include a walkthrough to look at any hazards or? Hazards?
No, it's purely about our contractors and the work they do and the safety work
Yeah.
that we have and the audits.
Yeah.
how we monitor
Right.
the work they do and how we talk to them about health and safety.
Do you conduct an annual walkthrough looking at for hazards? Because you're relying on hazards being reported, but I wonder if anyone does an annual walkthrough or a biannual walkthrough.
Through your chair, well, each of our facilities has a facilities manager, so they're constantly being monitored for any
Right.
issues, and this is our health and safety committee do a walkthrough of floors, so that's a separate
Okay.
set of eyes.
So that's effectively a walkthrough. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Everyone happy?
Yep.
Right, so, the motion is that the committee recommends the council receive the notice report entitled the health and safety report for the following 10 points, A through to I. You want me to move them individually?
No.
You want us to, don't you?
So I'll move A to I. Have a seconder, please. Thank you, Mayor. Although any debate, if not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. And that's it. So we'll move into the public excluded session of the meeting. Did you get one? Yes, we do. Right. Okay, so I move that the meeting moves into the public excluded session as per the reasons provided in the agenda. Have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Newell. All those in favour say aye. Against. And thank you for attending the meeting. Have a good evening.